I got laid off today.
Laid off? How could they do that? It's illegal. Why? Because you my son.
They moved on up and into our hearts. The Jeffersons wasn't just another sitcom. It was a cultural reckoning wrapped in laugh tracks. Premiering in 1975, it broke barriers as one of the first shows to feature a successful black family living in a Manhattan high-rise, unapologetically bold, loud, proud, and real. America laughed with George and Wheezy, flinched at their fights, and watched as the Jeffersons clashed with their neighbors, challenged societal norms, and made television history. But behind the witty comebacks and groundbreaking themes were actors carrying battles the audience never saw. Some soared after the fame. Others vanished. A few were consumed by illness, silence, or the very industry that once celebrated them. This video revisits 9 unforgettable cast members from the Jeffersons who have passed away, some tragically, some quietly, but all with stories worth telling. What really happened after the applause faded? Whose final days were haunted by loneliness, regret, or mystery? And who left behind legacies Hollywood never gave proper credit to? Their voices may be gone, but their stories still echo. Let's remember them, not just as characters, but as human beings who gave us laughter while often living through pain. One, Sherman Hemsley, George Jefferson, 1938 to 2012. He wasn't tall, he wasn't charming in the traditional sense, and he wasn't even Hollywood's first choice. But Sherman Hemsley was George Jefferson, and no one could ever take that from him. Born on February 1, 1938, in Philadelphia, Hemsley grew up in modest conditions, the son of a factory worker mother and a printing press laborer father. He dropped out of school, joined the Air Force, and worked the night shift at the post office while studying acting during the day. He found his voice not in front of a camera, but on a Broadway stage, starring in Pearly, a play about racial justice in the Jim Crow South. That performance caught the eye of Norman Lear, who offered him the role of George Jefferson in All in the Family. Sherman initially declined. He was still under contract on Broadway, but Lear waited. And 2 years later, the rest was television history. As George, Hemsley played the first wealthy, arrogant, complex black character to lead a sitcom. Audiences loved to hate him, and loved him even more for it. He was 37 when the Jeffersons launched, and for the next 11 seasons, he stormed across screens with fury, fire, and unmatched comedic timing. But off camera, Sherman was nearly the opposite. Deeply private, never married, childless, and almost pathologically reclusive, he rarely granted interviews and kept few close friends. Co-stars described him as generous but guarded, warm but withdrawn. After the Jeffersons, he found success again in Amen and later lent his voice to dinosaurs, but he never fully returned to the public eye. He died of lung cancer on July 24, 2012, at the age of 74. Though his final years were lived in quiet isolation, his legacy remained anything but quiet. Sherman Hemsley didn't just act, he exploded onto the screen. And even decades later, the sound of his voice and the stomp of his stride still echo in the memories of those who laughed, cheered, and moved on up with him. 2. Isabelle Sanford, Louise Wheezy Jefferson, 1917 to 2004. She was the quiet force behind the storm, the only person who could tame George Jefferson with a look, a word, or a sigh. But Isabelle Sanford was much more than Wheezy. She was a survivor, a pioneer, and the first black woman to win an Emmy for Best Actress in a comedy series, a milestone that took decades to come, and one she had to fight for with every ounce of resilience in her body. Born on August 29, 1917, in Harlem, Isabelle was the youngest of 7 children, and the only one to survive past infancy. Her mother disapproved of her dream to act, but Isabelle found her way to the stage anyway, sneaking out to perform in clubs and amateur nights at the Apollo. She eventually joined the American Negro Theater, honing her craft while working as a cleaning woman and raising 3 children after her husband left. It wasn't until her late 40s that she landed a breakthrough role in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, 1967, catching the attention of Norman Lear. A few years later, she became Louise Jefferson in All in the Family, and soon after, the Jeffersons turned her into a television icon. Off camera, Isabelle's life was far from glamorous. She had already endured loss, poverty, and single motherhood. But on screen, she radiated wisdom, wit, and unshakable dignity. Her chemistry with Sherman Hemsley was electric, despite a real-life age gap of more than 20 years, and together they built one of the most beloved TV marriages in history. After the Jeffersons ended, Isabelle never quite found another role that matched her power as Louise, though she continued to work in commercials and made occasional guest appearances, often alongside Hemsley. She passed away on July 9, 2004, at the age of 86 from heart disease, just days after receiving her long-overdue star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. For a woman who had spent her youth cleaning other people's homes, being immortalized on Hollywood Boulevard was more than poetic. It was justice. Isabelle Sanford didn't just play a strong black woman, she was one, and she carried that strength long after the cameras stopped rolling. 3. Mike Evans, Lionel Jefferson, 1949 to 2006. He was the bridge between generations, the thoughtful, witty son who challenged Archie Bunker's bigotry with calm precision, and the only person who could match George Jefferson's fire with quiet rebellion. Mike Evans didn't just play Lionel Jefferson. In many ways, he was him, young, smart, progressive, and unafraid to confront uncomfortable truths. But behind the scenes, his story was far more complicated, a tale of early fame, creative ambition, and a tragic exit that came far too soon. Born on November 3, 1949, in Salisbury, North Carolina, Mike moved to Los Angeles as a child and pursued acting at Los Angeles City College. He was just 21 when Norman Lear cast him as Lionel in All in the Family, a breakout role that placed him at the heart of one of television's most controversial and groundbreaking sitcoms. Lionel wasn't angry or radical. He was clever, composed, and subversive in his own way, calling out racism with a smile and a sharp comeback. Evans gave the character warmth and dignity, earning a devoted following. When the Jeffersons launched in 1975, Mike reprised his role, but the spotlight came with pressure. At the same time, he was co-creating Good Times with writer Eric Monti, becoming one of the rare black creatives with real power in Hollywood. But the weight of writing, acting, and managing behind-the-scenes tensions became too much. After only 8 months, he left the Jeffersons to focus on Good Times, and the role of Lionel was taken over by Damon Evans, no relation. Mike returned to the series briefly in 1979, but by then, Lionel had faded into the background. After the Jeffersons ended, Evans stepped away from the entertainment world entirely. He got a real estate license in 1986 and lived a low-profile life far from the fame he once knew. On December 14, 2006, he died of throat cancer at his mother's home in 29 Palms, California, at just 57 years old. His passing made barely a ripple in the media, a heartbreaking end for a man who had helped shape two of television's most iconic black families. Mike Evans didn't burn out. He quietly disappeared. But his voice, his mind, and his character still linger in every rerun where Lionel Jefferson dares to speak truth in a world full of noise. 4. Roxy Roker, Helen Willis, 1929 to 1995. Before she was Helen Willis, the graceful, intelligent neighbor married to a white man in one of television's first interracial couples, Roxy Roker had already been living that life off-screen. So when producers questioned whether she could convincingly play a black woman in an interracial marriage, she didn't argue. She simply pulled out a photo of her real-life husband, Cy Kravitz. That moment wasn't just casting gold. It was symbolic of who Roxy Roker really was. Fearless, poised, and unapologetically real. Born on August 28, 1929, in Miami, Roxy was raised in Brooklyn and educated at Howard University before she found her artistic family in the Negro Ensemble Company, a launching pad for countless black performers during a time of fierce segregation in Hollywood. She honed her craft in theater, working alongside future legends, and built a reputation as a grounded, eloquent performer with striking depth. When she was cast as Helen Willis in The Jeffersons, Roxy brought all of that experience with her. She played Helen with grace and quiet defiance, never backing down from George Jefferson's rants, never letting the moment define her. She and Franklin Cover, as Tom Willis, didn't just portray an interracial marriage. They normalized it for millions of viewers who had never seen anything like it on primetime TV. It was radical, and it was beautiful. But Roxy's most important role was off-screen, as the mother of rock star Lenny Kravitz. She raised him in Los Angeles, largely as a single parent after her divorce from Cy Kravitz, and instilled in him a sense of culture, activism, and pride. Lenny has often spoken of her as the most powerful influence in his life. Roxy Roker died of breast cancer on December 2, 1995, at the age of 66. Her passing didn't make major headlines, but the legacy she left, both as a trailblazer and a mother, endures. She was a quiet force in a noisy world, a dignified presence in a sitcom built on confrontation. And when Helen Willis walked onto that screen, she didn't just represent progress, she was progress. 5. Franklin cover, Tom Willis. 1928 to 2006. He wasn't the one delivering the punchlines, and he certainly wasn't the loudest in the room, but Franklin cover, as Tom Willis, may have held one of the most important roles in television history. As half of the first interracial couple to appear regularly on primetime TV, Cover didn't just play a character. He helped change perceptions across America, one awkward laugh at a time. Born on November 20th, 1928, in Cleveland, Ohio, Franklin Cover was a classically trained actor with a deep love for the stage. After graduating from Denison University in 1951, he spent years performing Shakespeare, Macbeth, Hamlet, Henry IV, touring military bases and British theaters, immersing himself in dramatic tradition. By the time he transitioned to television, he had built a reputation as a thoughtful, disciplined performer with impeccable timing. When Norman Lear cast him in The Jeffersons as Tom Willis, the white liberal married to a black woman, it was a bold, even risky move. But Cover embraced the challenge with sensitivity and humor. As Tom, he was equal parts well-meaning and oblivious, constantly navigating the cultural landmines of being the odd man out in both black and white spaces. His chemistry with Roxy Roker was natural and nuanced, and together they gave television one of its most groundbreaking, human portrayals of interracial marriage. Behind the scenes, Cover was the same man he portrayed, gentle, unassuming, and deeply committed to his craft. He stayed with the Jeffersons until the very end in 1985, and afterward took on supporting roles in films like Wall Street and Almost Heroes, as well as guest spots on TV. He never chased stardom, never craved the spotlight. He simply worked. Franklin Cover died on February 5, 2006, from pneumonia at age 77. His passing didn't generate front-page headlines, but his legacy lives on in every television couple that defies convention, every actor who plays against type, and every audience member who ever saw a bit of themselves in Tom Willis. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't loud, but he helped quietly rewrite the rules of what a sitcom and a marriage could look like. 6. Paul Benedict, Harry Bentley ***, 1938 to 2008. With his towering frame, exaggerated features, and clipped British accent, Paul Benedict's Harry Bentley was the kind of neighbor sitcoms dream of: awkward, eccentric, and endlessly endearing. But behind Bentley's polite smiles and spine-crushing greetings to George Jefferson was a deeply complex man whose face was shaped by a rare disorder and whose life was shaped by a relentless commitment to the craft of acting. Born on September 17, 1938, in Silver City, New Mexico, Benedict didn't always see acting in his future. It was only later, while performing on stage, that an endocrinologist in the audience diagnosed him with acromegaly, a hormonal disorder that distorts bone structure and gives the face an enlarged, unusual look. Instead of hiding, Benedict embraced his uniqueness, transforming it into a tool for unforgettable characters. Before the Jeffersons, Benedict was already respected in theater circles. He performed alongside Dustin Hoffman and Al Pacino, earned critical praise on Broadway, and directed Obie-winning plays. His transition to film and television was seamless. When Norman Lear cast him as Harry Bentley, the overly friendly British UN translator next door, Benedict brought both absurd comedy and understated humanity to the role. Bentley wasn't just a neighbor. He was a reminder that kindness and weirdness could coexist beautifully. Though he left the Jeffersons briefly during contract disputes, he returned to finish the series and continued acting long after the show ended. His resume included everything from The Goodbye Girl to This Is Spinal Tap to The Addams Family. He even charmed children as the mad painter on Sesame Street. Paul Benedict died of a brain hemorrhage on December 1, 2008, at the age of 70, at his home on Martha's Vineyard. He never married, never sought fame, and never stopped performing. He was a man who defied typecasting not by avoiding it, but by owning it completely. And in doing so, he turned Harry Bentley into more than just a sitcom sidekick. He turned him into a symbol of joyful strangeness, quiet loyalty, and the beauty of being different. 7. Zara Cully, Mother Jefferson ***, 1892 to 1978. She was sharp-tongued, judgmental, and gloriously unfiltered, the kind of mother-in-law who could silence a room with a single glare. As Olivia Mother Jefferson, Zara Cully brought elegance wrapped in venom, delivering insults with the grace of a grand dame and the precision of a scalpel. But few knew that by the time she became a household name, Zara had already lived through more than most actors could imagine, and waited over 50 years for her moment in the spotlight. Born on January 26, 1892, in Worcester, Massachusetts, Cully was a pioneer of black theater, long before television ever offered her a seat at the table. She was a seasoned performer and educator, spending decades teaching drama and appearing in stage productions across the country. For years, she was one of the few black women directing theater in the Jim Crow South. She had the talent, but never the timing. Hollywood wasn't ready for her. Until the Jeffersons. At 83, Cully was cast as George Jefferson's mother, a role that would finally bring her national recognition. And she made every second count. Her chemistry with Sherman Hemsley was electric, their verbal sparring legendary. She could undercut George's bravado with a single word, earning laughs while holding authority. Mother Jefferson was vain, overbearing, and utterly unforgettable, and Cully's theater-trained delivery made her lines sing. But just as her television career was taking off, tragedy struck. Zara was diagnosed with lung cancer in 1977, but continued to film episodes with unflinching dedication. She appeared for the last time in 1978, just months before her death at age 86. Her passing left a void that the show never quite filled. No one else could bring that same mix of regality and razor-sharp wit. Zara Cully's life was a testament to perseverance in the face of erasure. She waited half a century to be seen, and when the world finally looked, she showed them what they'd been missing. A woman of strength, talent, and fire, who didn't just play Mother Jefferson. She defined her. 8. Ned Werimer, Ralph the Doorman, 1923 to 2013. He wasn't a main character. He didn't have monologues or emotional arcs. But ask any fan of the Jeffersons, and they'll remember Ralph, the opportunistic, ever-grinning doorman who always seemed to appear when a tip might be in reach. Played by Ned Werimer, Ralph was more than comic relief. He was the glue that held the building's chaotic ecosystem together. And behind that sly smile was an actor whose life was just as quietly committed as his character was shamelessly opportunistic. Born on October 27, 1923, in Buffalo, New York, Werimer was a World War II Navy pilot before stepping onto the stage. After the war, he earned a business degree from the University of Pennsylvania, but quickly turned to acting, beginning his career in theater as both actor and stage manager. He was a consummate professional, versatile, reliable, and never chasing the spotlight. Werimer's television resumes stretched across decades, from The Mary Tyler Moore Show to Gunsmoke, but it was the Jeffersons that immortalized him. As Ralph Hart, he appeared in over 50 episodes, playing a character who was greedy, gossipy, and constantly hustling for tips. Yet Werimer gave Ralph a charm that made audiences love him despite, or maybe because of, his schemes. Off-screen, he lived a quiet life. He married Skye Oku in 1978, and while never a tabloid figure, he kept working well into his later years, even appearing in Pirates of the Caribbean, at World's End in 2007 at the age of 83. He never chased stardom because, in truth, he didn't need it. He had something rarer: steady work, lasting impact, and a character no one ever forgot. In late 2012, Werimer suffered a fall in his home. He died from complications on January 2, 2013, at age 89. His death didn't make national news, but for those who remember the Jeffersons, his absence was deeply felt. Ralph the Doorman may have worked the lobby, but Ned Werimer left his mark on the foundation of television comedy. 9. Irwin Keys, Hugo Modulewski ***, 1952 to 2015. He wasn't in every episode. He didn't have the spotlight. But when Irwin Keys showed up on the Jeffersons as Hugo Modulewski, George's bumbling, big-hearted bodyguard, you knew something ridiculous and wonderful was about to happen. With his towering frame, wild-eyed expressions, and perfectly timed cluelessness, Hugo became a fan favorite. But the man behind the lovable goon was anything but simple. His life was a patchwork of cult films, health struggles, and relentless hustle, fueled by the kind of determination Hollywood rarely honors until it's too late. Born on March 16, 1952, in New York City, Irwin was diagnosed with acromegaly, a rare disorder that altered his appearance and lent him the exaggerated features that made casting directors take notice and audiences never forget. Instead of letting the condition define him, Keys embraced it, turning physical difference into comedic power. He started acting in college, fell in love with the craft during a performance of The Lower Depths, and never looked back. The Jeffersons gave him national exposure, but Keys was already carving out a niche in cult cinema. He appeared in everything from The Warriors to Friday the 13th, The Exterminator, and House of 1000 Corpses. He was the guy you cast when you needed a thug, a bouncer, or a well-meaning brute. Yet within the typecasting, he always found humanity. His characters might have been caricatures, but Irwin gave them soul. Off-screen, he worked non-stop, TV shows, horror films, commercials, even music videos. His catchphrase from the Jeffersons, "Hi, remember me?" became iconic, plastered on posters and burned into fans' memories. But while audiences laughed, few knew the toll acromegaly was taking on his health. Irwin Keys died on July 8, 2015, at age 63 from complications related to the condition. His passing was quiet, but his impact was loud, lasting not because he had the most lines, but because he made every second count. He was the face you didn't forget, the heart behind the muscle, and proof that sometimes the most memorable performances come from the margins. Hugo may have been a joke, but Irwin Keys was no punchline. They came into our homes through the flicker of television sets, bringing laughter, chaos, and unforgettable moments. The Jeffersons wasn't just a sitcom, it was a revolution. It redefined what a black family could look like on screen. It dared to show interracial love, economic success, class tensions, and identity conflicts at a time when America was still afraid to have the conversation. But beyond the scripts and applause were the people who made it real. 9 actors who gave their talent, time, and in many cases, the last chapters of their lives to a show that changed television forever. Sherman Hemsley roared his way into legend, but behind George Jefferson's fire was a solitary soul. Isabelle Sanford broke barriers and earned an Emmy, yet struggled for recognition until the very end. Mike Evans lit the path for black creators, only to retreat into silence. Roxy Roker lived her truth both on and off screen, leaving behind a legacy that sang louder through her son. Franklin Cover and Paul Benedict balanced the absurd and the revolutionary with subtle brilliance. Zara Cully waited a lifetime to be seen, and made sure no one ever forgot her. Ned Werimer and Irwin Keys turned minor roles into permanent memories, showing that even the smallest characters can leave the biggest holes when they're gone. Their deaths didn't always make headlines. Their names may have faded from the red carpets, but their faces, those expressions, those voices, those characters, remain etched in the culture. They made the Jeffersons more than a sitcom. They made it human. So now, as we remember these 9 stars, we do more than mourn. We honor. We look back not with empty nostalgia, but with the understanding that these were lives lived out loud and in color, even when the world didn't always listen. If their stories moved you, let their memory move you too. Subscribe to the channel, share your thoughts, and help us keep their legacies alive.